Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization. Fitness Myths, series number 7. Extra protein has to be better. Yes, that is a myth. We'll talk about the claim, reasoning of why it's wrong, grains of truth, and best practices as always. So here's kind of the nature of the claim. 2 claims in here, really. One claim is that eating a gram per pound of protein per day is good. 1.25 grams per pound is better. 1.5 grams per pound is better still. And if you're super hardcore, Iron Warrior, I was going to swear, but the algorithm doesn't like to do that early. 2 grams per pound, brother. 2.5. I'm at 3. You eating 4 grams per pound yet? I'm at 9 grams per pound, bro. I'd like to see someone try that. Now, myth part number 2 is that natties, they do a gram per pound because they're pathetic and small. But if you're enhanced, you're in the Iron Legion, and more is better. More protein for enhanced. You earned it, brother. You earned it with that stick of the needle. So here is why this is wrong. And it's a couple points. First, nearly all data on naturals illustrates that a gram per pound of protein is usually overkill in almost every case. Okay, growth tops out at just below a gram per pound per day. So there are people who are very smart who make a serious critique even at the gram per pound number being too high. Okay, so, and if you look at the data, yeah, they're probably right. Now, in some extreme cases, pre-contest, last 3 weeks for naturals, 1.25 grams per pound can show marginal benefits. But most people are not in that extreme case by a long shot. So if you're not in that extreme case, it really is difficult to figure out why you're eating more protein than that. Now, here's one. Anti-hunger effects can be a thing. Protein has demonstrated anti-hunger effects. I sometimes on fat loss diets eat a little bit more protein than a gram per pound for those effects. But those top out at pretty close to the same level. Sure as hell isn't 2 grams per pound. It's maybe 1.25 to 1.5 at most. Adding more protein than that doesn't really do a whole lot of anti-hunger stuff. And if you eat more like fibrous green veggies, that has a huge anti-hunger effect for the same calories, way more than eating extra protein. Hat tip to Menno Henselmans for that really awesome insight. And if you don't follow Menno on every possible social media, you should. He's brilliant and one of my very good friends. And also he is like from the Netherlands, so he kind of talks like this, which I think is great, is amazing. And I butchered the Euro accent just for you, Menno. Lastly, gear, anabolic steroids of various kinds and other performance-enhancing substances, they increase feed efficiency, which means that for the same amount of protein, more of it goes to the muscle to grow, which if you're keeping track of this at home, that actually might mean you need less protein with gear, right? So with normal levels of protein, same as you were taking in as a natty, you should be growing just fine with gear, right? Now, maybe you can benefit from a little bit more protein as an enhanced person, but really the big cap on that usually isn't protein, it's calories. So you keep your protein the same, up your carbs like crazy, keep your fats normal, and that's really how to eat on gear versus off. So the whole more protein for gear people, maybe there's some research that's going to come up eventually that says, oh yeah, actually, if you do way more protein on gear, it works. And on theory and on practical observation, it seems to not make any damn sense at all. Now, what are some grains of truth? Because this isn't all wrong, it's just mostly wrong, as with almost every myth. There is a chance that some gear protocols can benefit from 1.25 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound per day. But 2 grams, which a lot of bodybuilders eat, like they weigh 200 pounds, they eat 400 grams of protein. Legit, people do that. And it strains the imagination as to why and how that would be optimal, especially knowing that you're decreasing carbs and fats to do that. Carbs or fats are anabolic as fuck, specifically carbs, especially above a certain range, and especially if protein's already met, and it is, right? Next, individual variation. Some folks may actually benefit from more protein than others. Some may be able to get away with less. So if as an individual you benefit from more, I'm not going to, get in your way, and maybe eating more protein is actually a good thing for you. And if you want to cover your bases, that's totally cool. So if you don't have to reduce fats to below optimum, and if you don't have to mess with your carbs, you have plenty of calories. If you want to up the protein a little bit, like 1.25 grams per pound per day, just to make sure you're getting enough, so you don't have to worry about protein quality and digestibility, or the idea that you may be an outlier and you need more protein, 1.25 grams of protein per pound per day is almost certainly going to cover you in damn near every case. So it's cool to cover your bases, and that makes some sense. So, I'll have every now and again on my social media, I'll post my diet, and someone's like, "You're eating more than a gram of protein per pound per day, idiot. How dare you?" It's nothing magical happens if you eat more than that. And if you want to cover your bases, it's totally cool. The opposite of magic happens when you eat like 1.5, 1.75, 2 grams per pound per day. And then the real question is, what are you trading off for that? And the answer is tons of fats and tons of carbs, which at that level of nutrient intake may actually be more beneficial to increase than protein, right? So what are the best practices here? What is the take-home message? Eat around 1 gram of protein per pound per day in almost every case. By the way, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you need less, probably 1.5 times as much. It covers your bases, gram per pound. I wouldn't recommend getting sly and eating less. Every now and again, someone's like, "Hey, can I eat 0.7 and still grow?" And I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Protein's expensive." And I'm like, "Man, if you're that financially constrained, having a serious hobby of being a bodybuilder and spending a ton of time on social media, talking to people, that just seems like an interesting use of your time." It's like, if you're really that financially constrained, which I have been many times, you work on increasing your career, getting to a place where you can make more money so then you can finally bodybuild properly. Awful value judgment. Take that for what it is. And yeah, you probably can grow on 0.85 just fine, but especially if you're not financially constrained, eat 1 gram per pound, and you won't have to worry about making sure that your bases aren't covered. You at least aren't going to be spending a ton of time training and recovering and sleeping and not getting gains or getting crappy gains and wondering, man, is it really the protein? Because if you're eating under 1 gram per pound, yeah, there's a very decent chance that it is. You don't want to have to worry about that. And that marginal increase in the amount of protein is usually so cheap, it's not worth worrying about. Now, if you are over 20% fat, can you scale that to lean body mass? 1 gram per pound per day of body mass. Instead of that, doing lean body mass. So if you're like 300 pounds and only really, 180 of that is muscle, do you have to eat 300 grams of protein per day? The answer is probably not. You can absolutely eat 180 grams of protein per day and probably have all your bases covered. For an anti-hunger effect, though, I would probably go somewhere between those two values. So if you're 300 and 180, maybe 230, 240 grams of protein is probably a good thing. The rest fat and carbs. So that's my personal advice there. Lastly, try eating 1.5 grams of protein per pound per day if you really think you may be able to benefit from more protein, if you have this suspicion. For a 6-month period, do this and check to see how your results are. If your results are notably better, drop to 1.25 grams per pound and see if you can replicate those notable results. If those results are no different than usual at 1.5 or 1.25, pick whichever one is best. But if neither of them seem better than 1 gram, go back to 1 gram per pound and save your money and the integrity of your anus. Folks, see you next time.